Here are 13 eye-opening facts about the First World War, shedding light on its unimaginable horrors and its far-reaching effects on the world. The First World War claimed the lives of over 16 million people, including 10 million soldiers and 6 million civilians. The death toll was unimaginable, with entire cities and villages destroyed, and generations of young men wiped out in what seemed like the blink of an eye. Many families were left without fathers, brothers and sons, forever altering the social fabric of entire nations. In some regions, it took decades for populations to bounce back, with some scars still visible today. From July 28, 1914 to November 11, 1918, the war raged for 1,564 days of constant bloodshed and suffering. Soldiers fought not only against enemy forces, but also against disease, hunger, and the ever-present threat of artillery fire. Trench warfare meant spending months in the same filthy, disease-ridden positions, often within sight of enemy lines. The war was so all-consuming that entire empires collapsed, and millions of lives were forever changed by the carnage. The First World War saw the large-scale use of chemical weapons like chlorine, mustard gas, and phosgene, which brought a whole new level of fear and horror to the battlefield. Unlike bullets or bombs, gas could silently creep into trenches, killing or maiming anyone caught in its path. Survivors were often left with lifelong scars, both physical and psychological, having endured suffocating gas attacks that often led to organ failure and severe burns. The use of chemical weapons shocked the world and remains a dark legacy of the war. The Battle of the Somme remains one of the deadliest battles in human history, with over 1 million casualties. On the first day alone, 57,000 British soldiers were killed or wounded, the worst single-day loss in British military history. Soldiers were gunned down by relentless machine gun fire or torn apart by artillery, all for a few yards of muddy, broken land. Even today, the Somme is remembered as a symbol of the futility and horror of trench warfare. Trench life was a hellish existence for those on the front lines. Soldiers lived in deep, narrow ditches dug into the earth that stretched for hundreds of miles across Europe. The trenches were often waterlogged, infested with rats, and reeked of death and decay. Soldiers were constantly under threat from sniper fire, gas attacks, and artillery barrages. Diseases like trench foot, which caused the flesh on soldiers' feet to rot away. It was a place of unimaginable suffering, where mental and physical health deteriorated rapidly. The First World War saw the first use of tanks in combat. Introduced by the British during the Battle of the Somme in 1916, these mechanical behemoths were designed to break through enemy defenses by crossing trenches and crushing barbed wire. However, early tanks were slow and unreliable, with many breaking down before even reaching the battlefield. Yet, they marked the beginning of modern mechanized warfare, foreshadowing the tank-dominated battles of World War II. Though often thought of as a European war, the First World War was fought on 6 continents, engaging over 30 nations. Troops came from as far as Australia, India, and Canada, while battles were fought in the deserts of the Middle East, the jungles of Africa, and on the high seas. In the Pacific, the Japanese Navy captured German colonies, and in Africa, German and British forces clashed in brutal guerrilla warfare. This truly was a war without borders, reshaping the global political map in ways that still resonate today. As the war was winding down, the world faced another deadly crisis: the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918. Wartime conditions, overcrowded troop transports, unsanitary military camps, and weakened populations accelerated the spread of the flu, which is estimated to have killed 50 to 100 million people, making it deadlier than the war itself. Soldiers brought the virus back to their home countries, causing a global pandemic that decimated entire populations. The First World War led to the collapse of 4 major empires: the German, Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, and Russian empires. This seismic shift in power led to revolutions and the birth of new nations like Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia. In Russia, the war fueled the Bolshevik Revolution, which ultimately led to the rise of the Soviet Union. The war also redrew the political boundaries in the Middle East and Europe, setting the stage for future conflicts. Animals played a crucial role in the First World War, particularly horses, which were used to pull artillery and transport supplies. Sadly, over 8 million horses died during the war, often under horrific conditions. Many were killed by artillery fire or machine guns, while others succumbed to exhaustion, starvation, or disease. Alongside horses, other animals like dogs and pigeons were used for communication and transport, with many also losing their lives in the war effort. The unimaginable horrors of trench warfare led to the recognition of a new psychological condition, shell shock, now known as PTSD. Soldiers suffering from shell shock displayed symptoms like uncontrollable shaking, paralysis, memory loss, and nightmares. At the time, little was known about mental health, and many soldiers were accused of cowardice or desertion. However, as more cases emerged, the condition became recognized as a serious consequence of the trauma of modern warfare. With millions of men at the front, women stepped into roles they had never before held, from working in factories to serving as police officers and nurses. Their contribution to the war effort was essential and gave momentum to the women's suffrage movement. In countries like Britain and the United States, women won the right to vote shortly after the war, marking a significant leap forward in the fight for gender equality. Though the Treaty of Versailles officially ended the First World War in 1919, it imposed severe penalties on Germany, including massive reparations, territorial losses, and military restrictions. This punitive treaty stoked deep resentment in Germany, creating fertile ground for the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. Just 20 years after the end of the First World War, the world would once again be plunged into another devastating conflict, largely due to the unresolved tensions left in the wake of Versailles. Hit that subscribe button for more. See you in the next video.